Okay, it's not just Florent. I have a fantastic panel. Marga, sorry, yes, Marga, I almost said you, Marta. Marga, Emmanuelle, and Gautier, please join us here because we're going to dig in a little bit deeper. And help yourselves to water should you need it. Let me do the introductions here because we have got a huge amount of expertise around this table. Emmanuelle Berenger is the forest lead for Rainforest Alliance, and a lot of your work, in a sense, it's not dissimilar to Florent's, right? Working with local communities in that part of the world, thinking about sustainability, putting communities at the heart of this work. Marga works here in Europe, in the Netherlands, in the UK, and in Ireland, and she runs More Trees Now. We have a saying in the UK, it does what it says on the tin. More Trees Now kind of does what it says on the tin. And Gautier Quéru, who is the managing director of Mirova. So many of our conversations at the moment are about how we unlock finance, unlock green financing to do the kind of work that you guys are doing. So, I want us to get on a plane, leave the Andes, and land in Schiphol, Amsterdam, and go to a small wooded area on the outskirts of Amsterdam. And Marga, I want you to take us back a few years. Tell us about the work that you are doing, planting trees in Europe.
Well, what we try to do is to combine the power of community with the power of the regenerative power of nature. So we rescue saplings that grow in places where they cannot mature, and we scoop them out with saplings and we give them away for free to accelerate tree planting and regreening the community around us. And that has a lot of benefits.
So just explain a bit more about that process. You find them, you give them away for free, and how do you then encourage those saplings to be planted in a way that they can then mature and in turn create more saplings?
Yeah, well, actually the first step was to find the saplings that grow in places where they cannot mature, because you're also helping the forest getting younger. You are restoring heaths that are not supposed to have trees in it, or peat bogs. And we found that actually by saying openly, we have these trees available, who wants to plant, we've created traffic jams of people who've wanted trees all over the country. So rather than try to overcomplicate things, we just opened up basically the call and says who wants to, because we're ready. There are millions of trees to be found in ecosystems that are not supposed to be there all over. We can restore those ecosystems and create new ones with the regenerative power of nature. And people showed up.
So it's a kind of a self-seeding movement.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so from planting more trees to looking after the trees that we already have. Emmanuelle, your work.
Yes, indeed. So Marga speaks about the regenerative power of nature, and it's amazing. So the most important is really to give room to forests and to make sure that the actual forest can stay there, because they do best, right? They regenerate by themselves. So we really need to remove the pressure on forests as a first step. And that's what a lot of people are trying to do. And we, on our side, are trying to engage farmers to stop deforestation by ensuring that they get a livelihood from the production of coffee, cocoa, tea, bananas, and others, and don't encroach in the forest to expand the area, that the area they already have is enough for them to thrive. So you probably have seen the frog logo and some of those products, and there are many others, of course, also contributing to that work. But this is not enough, right? Because the farmers won't encroach in the forest. But the forest that is there, what value does it have? If it doesn't have any value, it will be gone for other reasons. There's always a good or a bad reason to cut the forest, right? So how do you give value to forest? Well, we know it has value, right? We heard about the wonderful cultural value, the spiritual value, the ecological value, of course. But there are people there are countries that need to also develop provide livelihoods, make sure that the kids go to school, that there is a health system. So you cannot just say, don't touch the forest. It will not happen. It will just not happen.
Because there are always these immediate pressures to use the forest resources, consume them.
The underlying cause is basically poverty and the need for growth. That is one of the reasons of forest being gone for many different reasons. So giving value to the standing forest is something that is very important. So on top of working with farmers on certification, we also accompany communities and indigenous people in getting economical value from the forest by building small enterprises, helping them, of course, to improve management of the forest if needed, restore it where needed, because at some point we also need to accelerate, right, the restoration, and then through this mechanism, make sure that they can improve their livelihoods while preserving the forest. And I have great examples. We have many great examples.
I was going to ask. I mean, bring this to light. How do you create monetary value out of something that previously was just a nice tree?
Exactly. So, for example, in Guatemala, the communities have been giving something like 20 years ago community forest concessions, and they harvest 1 tree per hectare. So this is very low key. I have been there on the fire watchtower. We help them to build these towers to monitor fires, and you see a sea of trees, you know, that the eye cannot stop. And this is managed forests. When you go in protected areas, it's degraded. There has been fires, there has been illegal logging. So how come these managed forests look better? They look better because they harvest those very precious trees that they transform locally into decking, chairs, tables, that then export to high-value market like the US, and they make enough livelihood to be able to send their kids to school, to grow, to thrive, while keeping the forest. So I've been to those villages. The forest is up to their houses. They have not cut the trees. They keep them.
But is this not just a modern version of historic good care? Communities through all of history have known, well, if we knock everything down, then it will be gone.
Yes, this is very true. And actually, around 50% of the forest is somehow managed by local communities or indigenous people in the world. But only 15% actually somehow have rights, official rights to this forest. The rights have been taken away from them. So the first step is to give them back the rights and then support them into building these sustainable enterprises, give them potentially the tools about managing those forests if needed. So it's all about the enabling environment and making sure that their rights are recognized and that the markets are there for them.
The markets are there for them. How do we do that, Gautier?
Well, a lot has been going on over the past years with respect to financing, trees, nature, protection, restoration. And under the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, there are big objectives to restore this natural capital.
And to turn the tap on for green finance. Exactly.
And we are speaking about 700 to 900 billion euros a year to bridge the funding gap towards nature protection by 2030. So we need to bring more funding in, and that's what we have been trying to do at Mirova. Over the past 5 years, we have mobilized around 700 million euros around nature funds. And we have to do this with both efficiency to maximize the value for money or the impacts per euro invested, and with also strong integrity aligned with what is promoted by operators and standards like Rainforest Alliance. And the good news is that there is a very positive momentum. We started with a partnership with the UN, first to restore degraded land and by planting more trees. And the ability to raise funding came with the idea of blended finance. It was seen as risky activity. Growing trees in developing countries mostly was not seen as a great, I would say, investment opportunity per se. The impact are there, but the attractivity was not fully clear, and we could put together a blend of public and private money to test models and finance land restoration projects. So with the support of public investors like French Development Agency, the European Investment Bank on the one hand, and also committed private investors, including French insurance companies, I see some of them in the room, or other types of institutional investors. We could mobilize 200 million euros and finance land restoration project, doing agroforestry project, producing sustainable cocoa, coffee, tree nuts that would reduce pressure on nature and restore what has been degraded. And this has been working pretty well. And the good news is that now more and more players are coming in, corporates also, to contribute to their net zero, nature positive also journey, and are mobilizing more and more funding. So the investments tech sector for nature is really maturing.
Some people would argue that there is always going to be an inherent conflict in using the global financial system to fix this problem, when fundamentally the problem is trying to make money out of it in the first place. How do we get around that? How do we get around that inherent conflict?
Yeah, so it's by working hard first. It's not easy. Clearly, I mean, we need, it's not about replacing or believing that private money will solve everything. It's just based on the acknowledgement that public money and philanthropy will not be enough to bridge the funding gap. And actually there is a call for private sector mobilization under the global biodiversity framework, and use impact finance, blended finance. Of course, we're not speaking of super aggressive hedge funds, or I mean, it's not. It was speaking about impact finance mostly, that can find ways of combining efficiency, integrity, commercial viability, and really solid impact on the ground. And I think Rainforest Alliance around the table here is often promoting the fact that we can use market forces to protect and restore nature also for the benefit of the people, and the idea is to find this right balance.
We'll come back to you in a second. Do you have faith that the system can drive this change?
I think we need all the actors around the table. Everybody has a role to play, from finance to local communities to NGOs to individuals. We all have our little power, and if we don't use it, we lose our chance to make a difference. So this is really great that companies like Mirova and others invest in those projects.
And Marga, in the time that you have been doing your work, what sense do you get from when you go out, you talk to people? I mean, there are lots of people here trying to get support and investment for the kind of work that you do. Do you sense that there is something in the air, that people want to support your work?
Well, I definitely know that people are ready to get going. So the whole point of our project was, how can we make tree planting as simple and accessible as possible? And that's really why we designed the method we did. I mean, I hear farmers, I hear agroforestry. We've transplanted over 2 million saplings so far, rescued them from places where they don't belong and given them away. They went to farmers, cities to combat heat stress, tiny house initiatives, a food forest, anything that you can name. So there are so many actors that are ready to work. And if you make it accessible and simple, there's a lot of things we can do.
And when you see from Florent that his team, I wrote down one stat from his presentation that blew me away. They managed to plant 100,000 trees in a day. I mean, to me, that sounds extraordinary. Maybe to you, but that's a big number, isn't it?
That's a huge number, definitely, yes. But I also think that people underestimate what they can do. Right. On any given day that we have some volunteers in the forest rescuing saplings, one person can rescue 100 saplings that can grow into mature trees at the next farm. And that's just one day, one person harvesting for a few hours. So you can see how many hands make light work, and we can accomplish quite a lot.
Another, I thought, really interesting point that Florent made was around activating ancestral practices and principles. How, and we often, we love to look at pictures of First Nations Americans in the glorious dress, and we kind of think about ancient practices. But when you're talking about a woodland on the outskirts of Amsterdam, do you get a sense that people are yearning to reconnect with a more earthy sense of nature? Does it unlock something in the way that we see it being unlocked when we look in other parts of the world?
Definitely. I think people yearn to be part of nature because a lot of people in Western or Northwestern countries have forgotten that they are part of nature.
We are.
And a lot of indigenous communities haven't. So there's a lot we can learn from it. And by engaging with your environment and understanding and learning about the regenerative power it has to also green your own immediate environment is a, well, it can be also a spiritual and very educational thing to do.
So I want to take it from the kind of spiritual back to the policy and the kind of how do we drive the hard change? And one of the challenges we face is trying to unlock harmful subsidies and harmful practices. From your perspective, what are the blockages? What do we need to change?
Yeah, it's a big question. It may be above my pay grade.
Sorry, I keep sending you these big questions, don't I?
No, that's fine. I think it's about really having a narrative around what we can gain from this transition towards a low carbon, nature positive economy. And I think in the energy sector, I think this narrative has become clear of moving away from fossil fuel to renewable energy, energy efficiency, and in the food system, in the exploitation of the living of nature, there is also the idea that we need to move to a regenerative economy that not only exploits nature but also invest in it and restore nature as it interact with it. And this narrative is coming up. And I think we speak of regenerative agriculture, regeneration in general, agroecology, agroforestry. This is becoming central in many conferences. And now it's about, beyond this narrative, indeed creating the signals, either from policy signals, and in the European Union there has been great progress over the past years.
Yeah.
And with the restoration law, with deforestation-free products, that creates clear signals. CSRD is also a big regulation that is creating some challenges, but still encouraging. But beyond the stick, we need to have a carrot, and it's about also creating new activities, new businesses, more resilient supply chains, more resilient ecosystem. And I think for both consumers, providers, and all the ecosystem for companies, finance, it's really aspirational. So I think it's a mix of stick and carrot, and we're getting there progressively.
And you're probably about to tell me once again that this is above your pay grade, but I'm going to ask you anyway. And I'm sure Emmanuelle will have a view just in terms of the kind of global regulatory framework. In the UK, after, I'm going to say this horrible word, Brexit, but I've just said it. After Brexit, there was meant to be a big transition away from the common agricultural policy towards more nature-friendly subsidies or payments for farmers. When you look across the world, do you see really progressive examples of legislation and governance that is really driving the kind of work that these guys do? Who's doing the good governance work?
Yeah, it's hard to tell and give good grades to, but definitely, for instance, in Colombia, there are massive progress with the promotion of habitat banks and no net loss of biodiversity. That is very inspiring, and Colombia will host the next Biodiversity COP in October later this year.
Yeah.
In the UK, actually, there has been this biodiversity net gain legislation that is also creating a buzz. I mean, there is a bit of interest, and also in Asia. I mean, there are many countries that are also, with different approaches, angles, promoting the restoration and the protection of nature. Why? Because ultimately it's about clean air, clean water, also sustainable livelihood. So it's not only at the expense of the economy, or just it's not necessarily a trade-off. It can be aligned. So I think there are great initiatives all around the world.
Emmanuelle, what's your perspective?
Yes, I want to give two encouraging examples. One which is a very long-term one in Costa Rica. I think it's the example that all the ecologists mentioned. They have made that decision to not invest in an army, but invest in nature, and to really protect what they have and restore what they have lost. And they have developed governmental payment for ecosystem services that is really working well. I really encourage you to go to Costa Rica. It's amazing. It's the only place in the world where I've seen really like a forest and animals going into the beach, and you walk among them. It's amazing.
I'm there. I can feel it.
Yeah, no,
that's
we're really great.
Paris,
but this is a policy. Was a policy decision, a political decision, and it worked.
Yep.
And it still works,
yep.
right? So this is really great. Not in an easy context, right? Coming back to us, right? Yes. So because we also have to make efforts.
Sure.
There is recently the EU deforestation and degradation regulation made from the European Union. That is very encouraging. That has the potential to be a game changer. So the idea is that on the European market will be allowed only products that have proven not to come from deforestation or forest degradation. So of course deforestation, this is more about imports, but even forest degradation, this is within Europe, right? Because we are losing biodiversity at a speed and scale that is amazing. So if we can implement this well, we have the chance, you know, to reverse that.
And what can individuals do then? What can we as individual actors do to accelerate this?
Look, I think the list is too long. I will just give one example. I mean, we've heard so many things about what we can all do, and all these beautiful startups and things. It's so inspiring.
Yep.
I do really think that the market is a driving force on top of the political one, but we really need both. And the market, it's basically the people who consume, who purchase. Every day when we make a choice about what we buy, we can make a difference. It's very simple. So reducing the footprint of the product, make sure they don't come from pesticides, use deforestation, etc. Of course, there's the RA logo, the frog, but there are many other initiatives. So I think that this is something that really can make a difference as a small step. And then, of course, you know, anything you can do to restore ecosystems, protect them, that's great.
Marga, what do you need to help you do more of what you do?
That's a good question. Well, we need a lot of hands. A lot of people are willing to roll up their sleeves and do the transplantation work.
So just time, getting involved.
Effort, municipalities who are forward-looking, foresters who want to engage with the community around them, and funders who want to help us accelerate to even higher scale.
And Gautier, when we talk about Emmanuelle's point that consumers have a big role to play here, for you, it's about proving, you know, if we talk about redefining the value in the supply chain, well, if there's a desire, if there's a need, if there's a market, that helps you you can go and get the money to make it happen.
Exactly, and I think altogether we need to build what we call a track record, showing that it works, that money can help unlock situations that have concrete impacts on the ground, and just scaling up. And like we've done so far, like with the energy transition, let's do it for the agroecological transition as well.
I would like you all to just have a final call out. What's your key message to change now? Because I think we might have a little surprise after this session. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Emmanuelle.
Yes, I would say that forests are more than trees.
Yeah.
And forests are also people within forests. We need to reconnect with nature, both with our hearts, but also recognizing the tremendous value that they have for us at all levels, and bring them back into our system thinking, not as a decoration, but really within our lives, like the communities do that we work with. So let's try to reconnect with nature. That's my call.
There is something very special about trees and forests, isn't there?
There definitely is. Well, I'd like to invite people who feel the urgency to get going now to come talk to us. We are called More Trees Now. We are at ChangeNOW. The time really is now. So as long as we can get going, we can get a long way.
Final word for you.
Yeah, I think what is great about ChangeNOW is putting together in the same room and great place so many diverse, people with different backgrounds, civil society, public sector, private investor, corporates, startups, and I think it's really about building the coalitions of the willing to join forces to move to the tipping point. And so it's really about encouraging more of this coalition. We work with many players, including corporates, some in the room as well, and it's really these types of alliance that can prove that things can change now for the better.
We see what you did there.
No, but, and I think this is really the avenue for real and concrete results. It's about joining forces with those who are committed to, and I think there's a lot of good vibes and good energy here at ChangeNOW that can only encourage everyone to continue, and so let's do this together.
Take this energy and make it work. Gautier, Marga, Emmanuelle, thank you all very much indeed.